Welcome to Bounty Hunt. How's it going? A Patreon. Nope, I used to be a Patreon. A UTD Network podcast. It's the muscle memory, y'all. This is where we explore all the extra content in the Star Wars universe. I am one of your hosts, Eric Eilerson, and joining me today to talk about the latest episode of The Mandalorian Season 3, the Book of Boba Fett, is the full Asheville contingency. That's right. We got the full 5-pack here, starting off with Dr. Corey Helton. Hey, buddy.
Hello. Hello, friends. Hope everyone's doing well. This was a good episode. I'm excited to talk about it.
It is good Star Wars. You know what else is good? Dr. Charles Hankel. Are you good?
I'll take that. I'll take that. I would not be rated as highly as I'm about to rate this episode, though. I don't want to waste any time. There's a lot to talk about.
Oh, that's true. I wouldn't rate you as high as this. You're not like, Wes Jenkins or anything.
Oh, caught me off guard. I awake. I haven't had coffee in 2 days. Today's the first day, but I am super excited to talk about this episode, and I'm glad I didn't spoil it for myself by actually reading the title of it before I watched it.
I'm so proud of you. I can also tell you haven't had coffee because you said it's been 2 days, and today is the first day. What's the lie, Wes? Anyway, the last member of our crew is the man that held the camera, the man that wormed his way into our hearts, Timothy Guthrie.
What is up, fam blam? Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for being here, my dude, in your Cobb Vanth shirt. I'm loving it. Everyone, we are here, of course, to talk about The Book of Boba Fett Season 1, Episode 5. Spoiler warning already here. Return to the Mandalorian. That's the title of the freaking episode. So if you haven't watched it, I don't believe you. But if you're new here, I do believe you. And what we do here is briefly summarize what happened in the episode. Then we're going to talk about some things we loved about it. And occasionally we talk about things we didn't like, but that's a little less in this episode. But let's jump right into it because, as we have said, there's so much to talk about. So, Book of Boba Fett, Season 1, Episode 5, Return of the Mandalorian, opens up on a meatpacking plat. That's right. It's a prequel to Rocky, where the Mandalorian himself enters right from the start. He's working a job by killing a bunch of dudes. We see Din go into the back room, find the subject of his bounty, and immediately start fighting with the darksaber like a total badass. Kills the guy, cuts his head off, tells everyone, go get the credits, they're not mine. And then he walks out onto a literal halo ring to get his bounty. The bounty, we find out, is information, not only credits, but information about the whereabouts of the Armorer and Paz Vizsla. That's right, he goes and finds the Mandalorians again. Din shows them how he has retrieved the darksaber, then he learns its history, and the Armorer forges his Beskar spear that he used to fight Moff Gideon into something for Grogu. Maybe chainmail? Who knows? Later on in the episode, Paz Vizsla gets a little angry about his family's darksaber being in the hands of Din and challenges him for the right to wield it. They duel, but Paz fails. However, after the duel, the Armorer calls them all out to vow that they've never taken off their helmets, and as we remember from Mandalorian Season 2, Din absolutely has. His past removal of his helmet is revealed, and he is exiled from the Mandos once more. Din then hops onto a Star Cruiser to Tatooine after removing all of his weapons, and he seeks out his good friend Pelimato, who has a line on a replacement for the Razor Crest that got blown up. She pulls out an old N1 Naboo starfighter. Eric screams to the heavens in joy, and then Peli and Din work on restoring it with a bunch of droids. After the repairs are finished, Din goes in his new, shiny, sleek silver N1 starfighter and takes it for a spin. He flies it on the pod racing route, he thrives it through Beggar's Canyon, and we all just feel a little more alive than we did before. He then blasts it off into space, flies past the Star Cruiser, which is absolutely a commercial for the upcoming Halcyon Hotel, and he runs into our good friend Appa, Captain Carson Teva, and Lieutenant Reed, who try to take his information in their X-Wings, but he escapes by pressing the button and zooming away. However, they don't want to do any paperwork, so they let it slide. Back on Tatooine, Din lands, and he and Peli are visited by Fennec Shand, who has come to hire Din as muscle for Boba Fett. Remember him? The titular character? But Din says, you know what? You don't gotta pay me. This one's on us. But before I come help you out 2 episodes, I gotta go say hey to a little friend. All right, fellas. Chapter 5. We like Chapter 4 pretty good. It was probably like our second highest rated of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Chapter 5 was very different. Charles, 1 to 10.
10.
Correct.
Easy.
Corey.
10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10. 10
I'm gonna hold off by giving my rating. I don't think I can give it a 10. I love it. It's so good.
I loved
it.
Over
I
streaming
loved
the
it.
show from my computer if we have to kick Wes off of the
Wes
podcast.
minus 7
Trevor is
points.
going to murder you.
I mean, how could you not, like, in the first 3 seconds of the damn episode? So, anyways, yeah, 10. We'll give it a 10. I don't know if they can top
Perfect 10. 50 around the board. All right, so a couple things about this episode, obviously. That's the easy stuff. This episode was absolutely incredible.
It was phenomenal.
I mean, all around the not even the only criticisms obviously have been that this was basically an episode of The Mandalorian season 3. It isn't the Book of Boba Fett. Boba was literally not in the episode.
That's
and
not criticism.
Yes, exactly. So, but
if it is criticism, it's not valid criticism.
there we go. And I actually wanted to start talking about that particular point with you guys, though, because obviously this is the Mando's episode. It is Bryce Dallas Howard directing. A+, she's incredible. We loved her stuff in Mandalorian, and she's basically getting to do that again. So, what did you guys think about taking an episode of the Book of Boba Fett, of which there are only 7, and which and we've been like kind of, skeptical of the overall story. We've been like, it seems like we should know more, and obviously now we take an entire episode, more than 10% of the show, and leave the main story to do this. Obviously, we enjoyed the content, giving it perfect 10s. But what did you think about that as an idea for the Book of Boba Fett as a show?
I'm fine with it. I mean, I think it's like I think it's kind of like the MCU, right? I mean, it's like a crossover.
Sure.
event.
Yeah.
Like in the comics. I mean, there's so many examples of this in media where like you have major characters coming in. Like this goes back as far as Scooby-Doo, all right? Because you used to have like you remember Scooby-Doo meets the Harlem Globetrotters?
I was gonna say, can we have the Harlem Globetrotters in Book of Boba Fett? That would be incredible.
That's what this is. I mean, it's like it's totally fine. It doesn't matter that this happened in Book of Boba Fett, and it's tied in. Like, wouldn't it have been kind of weird maybe if Mandalorian was just in the episode and like the episode just opens of him and Boba Fett like hanging out and doing stuff? Wouldn't we be like, what the hell where's he been? Like, wouldn't we worry about that? I mean, I would be like, I don't feel like we wasted an episode to see this like at all.
Yeah. I thought the same thing because when they mentioned the muscles coming last week, and we heard the Mandalorian theme, I did have the thought, and we talked about it a little bit on the show, that there are a lot of questions that we would need to know. And this episode essentially answered a bunch of those. We now know where we stand with the darksaber. We now know where he stands on his level of Grogu-ness. Like, he might still go see Grogu before he comes back, so we may not see him till episode 7, or that may be part of Mando season 3, whatever they're going to do. But this did a great job of answering those, and it reminded me a lot of the interlude chapters in like Alphabet Squadron, where we had the chapters with Devin in them. Andrew in our chat and our team brought that up when we were talking about it earlier this week. It's like the Aftermath books, how there's a bunch of interludes that tell you what else is going on in the galaxy as you're reading. And I thought it was a really cool way to use an interlude that was also a really just excellently produced piece of content. And if there is any remote downside, and I don't think this is a downside, I'm just having trouble finding another word for it, is that this did highlight, I think, how strong the craft of the Mandalorian had become in seasons 1 and 2. The Book of Boba Fett, I think, was still finding its feet craft-wise as far as the directors go and as far as things like the effects go. Whereas the visual language of Mandalorian was so established in the first 2 seasons that getting it back here, I'm talking even camera angles, even action shots, like it all is so like point by point by the book Mando that I'm like, oh, this is polished. And whereas some of the Book of Boba Fett stuff was still really good, it's just maybe missing that little Beskar shine, if you will.
Just hearing the theme from the Mandalorian just made me think how much we've all really missed that show, because we haven't really been thinking. I mean, a lot of us have been thinking about it, I guess, but not so much as to like, wow, this show was really, really good, and I can't believe I've missed so much of this. I can't wait for season 3 now. So we got our teaser for season 3 in this episode, and we got a little bit of how Boba's going to get his muscle. So, I mean, can you give it more than 10? Can you give it a 10?
This one goes to 11? Like, I mean, I don't... Sure. Yeah, I think it's a super fun way to do it. And I also love that they went back to some questions we had in the earlier Mandalorian episodes, like darksaber things, right? Like, we have a couple people on our team that quite like the darksaber. Check out Meg Dowell's bylines everywhere on the internet. But I wanted to also get you guys' opinion on that, because we saw Din using the darksaber. Obviously, the first scene, I freaked out when he brought it out and just started chopping people in half. That was great. But then he's talking about literally how it's heavier and it's not responding to him in a certain way. And then it almost felt like an episode of Star Wars Rebels there in a bit. We got like Kanan and Sabine action. So what do you guys think about specifically the darksaber lore we got, like with the Vizsla getting a little more personal about it? And how did you like us seeing that in live action, including the Night of 1,000 Tears stuff that we got? Oh my God, yeah! Look at that! Look at that! Look how good it looks!
So
good
cool.
it looks.
Yeah, this you're definitely right that this is polished. Like, this is like by far the most polished episode that we've ever seen. Like, I almost wonder if it was made like a year ago. Like this is not like this is
like when did they shoot it?
Yeah, when did they shoot this?
That's a good
Like, did they
question.
shoot this ages ago? Because like it doesn't look like the rest of the Book of Boba Fett looks. It definitely looks like a higher quality.
Yeah.
Yeah. The darksaber stuff, what interested me the most was how much trouble Din had wielding it, right? Because it was like very heavy and he was like kind of fighting the blade. That's actually it's not new, I guess, that non-force users have trouble wielding some of these things, right? Like even Han looks very uncomfortable using Luke's lightsaber to open up the Tauntaun in Empire. But in the Legends, it was actually that it was hard for people to wield lightsabers because the blade had no weight. It was weightless, and so it was like difficult to feel where it was in space, etc. It's like the exact opposite. But we have seen non-force users, like in the comics, use lightsabers, like typical lightsabers, without really much issue. There's that, Star Wars mainline classic issue where like I think even Chewie has a lightsaber at one point. It's wild.
Yeah.
So the darksaber is different, right? We already knew it was different, but there's something like very, very specific to it that made it so difficult to wield. And I want to know a lot more about that.
Yeah, I thought it was cool to see that element of it for sure. I mean, the darksaber has always been this individual kind of thing, and we see it first. We see it in Clone Wars, we see it in Rebels. Obviously, the Trials of the Darksaber arc with Sabine is such a powerful thing where she's learning to wield it, and the parts where Kanan has to train her to, like you're saying, Charles, literally feel it differently. Like, why are you fighting against this? Because there's an emotional weight to the Darksaber that includes the history of Mandalore, like within it in a weird way. And that's one of the things I really like that Star Wars can do, is incorporate so many different things. Like, we have the raw power, like we see in the screenshot of the darksaber. Like, it chops people in half. It is an incredible blade, but it is also a historical blade. It is representative of the ties between Mandalorians and Jedi. It is also a blade that is absolutely soaked in the history of like betrayal and battle and conquest. Like, you can wield it if you fight someone for it, and if you don't, like Bo-Katan, as they kind of hinted at this episode, who was just given it by Sabine, then it curses Mandalore. And it's like this idea that the blade is sentient, which is something we've seen in lightsaber crystals lately. Like, they call out to people. Your crystal is a living thing on Ilum, And the darksaber does seem to, very much like wands in Harry Potter, like be kind of sentient. And I like the fact that Din, the armorer, was saying, like, you're fighting against the blade. It's heavy. Well, are you fighting against the blade? Like, that's another battle that he didn't think about. And I thought that was just written very well in this particular episode.
I like that you called out the emotional components of it as well, because I think Din is not balanced at all in any of his thoughts and feelings towards anything. But even Vizsla, when he gets a hold of it, he struggles a bit. And I thought that was really cool to see that it's not just you're going to get it or you're not. Like, you might struggle, and it matters that you are on even ground, that you are balanced in mind and heart,
Right.
And purpose. And Din is struggling to find that purpose. And it's cool to see in that particular manner.
Yeah, I mean, clear eyes, full heart can't lose. So I just think that's the easiest way to wield the darksaber. Now, you mentioned the armor. We mentioned Vizsla, who my lovely little Funkos I got to pull out. Haven't seen them in a while. Pulled them off the shelf today. How do you guys feel about specifically the armorer leaving this episode, because the armor has always been kind of a really awesome figure. Like her fights in the first 2 seasons of Mandalore with literal hammers versus like blasters and knives and stuff have always been incredible. You know, this is the way, her thing. She forges the Beskar armor. She makes all these amazing things. But then this episode, she trains Din. She tells him about the darksaber. She tells him, you wield it. But then he's like, I took my helmet off. Can I atone?
Oof.
She immediately kind of goes to cult leader in a way and expels him immediately. So my question for you guys, and this is 2 parts. One, how do you think this affects Din's feelings about Mandalorians? Do you think he still wants to be one, or do you think this part of his quest is over? And 2, did this affect your personal feelings about the armorer? Because I guess she didn't change. We've always kind of known this, but to see it this bluntly was a little different.
I've like always kind of been a little skeptical of the armor personally.
Mhm.
And once we kind of introduced the idea that like she's with the remnants of Death Watch, and like maybe not the right the right versus like right and wrong Mandalorians, like maybe she's on like the wrong side a little bit, like in Bo-Katan and stuff brought all that up in those previous episodes from Mandalorian season 2. I was like, I don't know where this is going to go with this character, but I'm kind of fine with it, I think, because like, I mean, they're kind of like the bad guys in a lot of ways, right? I mean, she's got, I've always wondered why she's got the horns on her helmet, right? Is she a Mandalorian, right? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I like how she's always been like the person of structure with the creed. So even though she has her followers, she's the one that everybody kind of follows as the leader, I guess, right? So she is not going away from it. So as it showed in that picture where she told him, "Hey, you're no longer a Mandalorian, but you got to go underneath the mines of Mandalore that apparently has been destroyed and find some living water."
It's Blind Faith makes a great point in the chat that the armor is so steadfast that even though there is only 3 of them left now, like Vizsla says, there's 3 of us, and now there are 2. She literally is so steadfast about this one notion that she turns away potentially a third of their people left in the universe.
That's a good point.
Instead of adapting, instead of like, I refuse to even let you try to atone differently. I am so stuck in the dogma of the Children of the Watch that I am not going to actively recruit. I don't care about the foundlings. I don't care about this. I will slash our numbers to extinction practically because you don't not follow this particular way. And I think that we're going to see Din potentially in season 3 struggle with that a lot. I don't think personally that he's done with the Mandalorians. I think he does now maybe want to go to Mandalore and like cleanse himself in the mines or whatever. I think that might be where we go. But I do think it's going to cause some questions of like, the only thing more valuable to him than the Mandalorians, I think, is Grogu, is his relationship with the child. And I don't think he regrets taking that helmet off for Grogu at all. But now there are consequences to that, and I think we're really going to see him reckon with that.
Grogu is making him question his religion. A
young
child.
Don't have kids; they'll send you straight to hell. You can't do it.
Exactly it.
No, I just want to see him come back and kick her off the platform. That's really all I want.
Doesn't have a jetpack.
She doesn't. Yeah.
All right, so we get our awesome Mandalorian section. We see the Night of 1,000 Tears. We see literally, what is that, hundreds of TIE bombers that flew over Mandalore and just blew it up.
One of the coolest shots in all of Star Wars.
Do y'all want to relive that real quick?
Let's relive that. All right. So we see that we saw people said this was the siege of Mandalore. This is post siege of Mandalore for Clone Wars. This is all Empire. But I mean,
nuclear weapons, like good God.
Look at this.
It's crazy, man.
Like the volume of destruction.
The amount of bombers.
Like, look at that! It feels like the Blitzkrieg in World War II. Yeah. You know, it's obviously, I mean, Star Wars has always been militarily World War II and Vietnam, but
I want this movie.
I mean, this is it, you know? I think this is.
I know
Oh,
the
yeah.
K2
K2
droids were
droids.
crazy
Go in there and
too.
clean it up, K2.
It's just Terminator. Like we all in
Huge.
you know, we always think of K2 as this friendly droid because that was the first one we saw. But to every other person in the galaxy, those are droids of terror and destruction.
Yeah,
Mhm.
right.
You know, like
Right.
play Fallen Order. They suck. God, they suck.
You got-
Fallen Order.
You have to get BD to get in there and recircuit their heads so you can use one as a friend.
Oh man.
So that was
always too time consuming to do that.
It
just made more
is.
sense
It
just to
takes-
kill
You just
them.
gotta kill him.
Just kill him instead. You don't need to do
just
all
kill
that.
him. Just be done with it.
Hopefully the second game will be easier. So we get all the Mandalorian stuff, and then weirdly now we get to the meat of the episode. Speaking of BD, we didn't mention that. Thank you, Angelia. We did see a BD droid on the sands of Tatooine. Let's head over. Let's take our little Star Cruiser, which was an adorable little sequence. I love that he had to take all his weapons off. Someone on Twitter likened it to like a samurai trying to get on an airplane, like just taking off literally everything.
That's pretty funny.
But then we do get to Pelimoto, who, for me, I have been vocally sometimes irritated by this character, but I thought she worked perfectly in this episode. I thought she was great. There's that little BD and his adorable little tippy taps. I love him.
Yeah, I loved her.
And then-
I'm over it. I was kind of in that camp too with you, Eric. In the first first season? I guess it was first season of Mandalorian.
Yeah, she's first
and,
season.
Like, yeah, and I'm like all behind her now. I loved her
Yes!
this episode. She was a great character.
She should date a Jawa. Furry. Very furry.
That was
Oh,
hilarious.
Lord.
What
Way
a
too much
callback.
information.
In the way she was talking about him, just doing that, just like smacking her lips. What was that?
So funny. And then when they're like asking about her, she's like, "No, I'm working on me now."
That
No,
was
I'm
great.
Like, that's
No, thanks. I'm working on it.
amazing stuff by Amy Sedaris. But
Oh,
then,
man.
guys, we talk a lot about bingo cards and a lot about how we're surprised. If anywhere on my bingo card I had the square of Eric gets to see his favorite starship design from the prequels we put in The Mandalorian, I wouldn't have believed you. A freaking N1?
Yeah, I know.
We got a freaking
Very-
N1 Naboo cruiser.
Crazy.
Starfighter.
Wild choice. Never would have guessed it in 1,000 years. Never would have guessed it. You know, I think that's what they're really proving that they're doing with these Star Wars live action shows, right? They're showing that like there are norms in Star Wars, and we do not always have to stick to that, right?
Right.
Not all
Right.
Mandalorians have to fly a freighter, right? Like,
Yep.
It's interesting. It's interesting. Like I don't know if like I'm still kind of wishy-washy on whether or not I want it. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
it's an N1 starfighter. Does it make sense for Mandalorian? Like we got to see how it works out and stuff. But like you can't argue with the execution. Holy
true.
crap!
No!
Like,
I love
It's
how
beautiful.
phenomenal.
I love
No.
how we were all so excited by seeing that. All the prequel kids were like, "Holy crap, the N1 starfighter!" And then the whole time the Mandalorian was like fixing it, he was like, "You can have this pile of shit back. I'll take my Razor Crest."
Exactly.
This thing sucks. Why would you want this? And we're like, they're handmade by the people of Naboo. Are you kidding?
I love that the Jawas just kept stealing shit too, so they could put on it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Such a great touch. He's
Like
like,
they
"Where did
stole
you get
the-
this?" So we jacked it off of a pike ship while they were filling up their
Well, they were
gas. I'm like,
refueling.
bro,
This one on the left looks like he's got himself a little pot belly. I love it.
Yeah, he's great. He's eating good. And then, of course, the last thing they got, that rod that they got off the Pike ship, that was the thing that they use in, I believe, in A New Hope in the trash
Yeah,
compactor.
the trash compactor.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's literally, so it's all these really cool organic callbacks. And Wes, to go over what you said about the N1, I like how you're right. We're all getting excited. And I'm like, oh my God, the glorious yellow. And Din's like, get that yellow shit off of here. It's like, but he's like, I'm
We
buffing
gotta
it
grind it
out.
off.
Like,
I know,
it looks
so
just
funny.
like his.
Here's that
I can't
piece.
wait for the. Yeah, there's that piece with. Oh my God, what a great face by Amy Sedaris right there. Absolute acting your butt off. I can't wait to get the Lego set for this. Let's be real. That's another reason why you make it silver, so you know the Lego's different.
Mhm.
And then specifically, Charles, I want to ask you about this as our resident. Make another pod racing game, pod racer book happen, fella. We got essentially a pod race in this episode. How did you like seeing the N1 go through the freaking Boonta Eve Classic trail, going into Beggar's Canyon?
Yes.
Yeah. My God.
Well, so when they actually first went into the hangar and okay, while this is up on the screen, I want to talk about this. You see this off on the right-hand side. That's literally the fence that Anakin bursts through when he goes up the ramp.
Oh, it's all
to
destroyed.
jump over Sebulba. Like all the pieces are literally still
No
sitting
one
there,
cleaned
all
it up.
broken up.
No one cleaned it up.
Cool touch.
Which is incredible. But
Yep.
but yeah, so when they first went in the hangar and the N1 was underneath the sheet, like those front engines, for a hot second, I was like, oh my God, there's a pod racer under there. And then I was like, that makes no sense. But it was like a moment of disappointment. I was like, okay, it's an N1. That's still pretty badass. But yeah, they used, I think, some sound effects from the pod racers for some of the engine stuff that was going on. Like that. Yeah, that really I don't know, it transported me right back to when I was like a 6-year-old hearing all this for the first time. It was incredible to see him just going through that same area. It still looks great. Like, give me the pod racing show, man, or an episode. Give me an episode.
I know. I'm here for it.
And I want to throw out one other point about the N1, because I know some people had brought up like it doesn't make sense for Mando to have a single person fighter essentially at this point, because if he's bounty hunting, like how is he going to transport people around? And I think that goes to show that he's not going to be bounty hunting anymore.
Right.
Like, that's not his plan.
Yep, because neither is Boba, and I think like we are still in the book of Boba Fett, and I think Boba's like, I was gonna turn my back on being a hunter, and I think that, I don't know, call me crazy. Last episode we had Boba Fett getting a ship that has a single fighter and can shoot a lot of things. This episode we got Din getting a ship with a single fighter that can shoot a lot of things. Wouldn't it be cool if maybe in the finale we see the fire spray and the N1 flying side by side, blowing stuff up? And my brain short-circuited thinking about that.
Here's a picture of the scale of the N1 compared to the person who's in it, right? So it's pretty good. It's a pretty good size. From when you saw it inside the shop, it looked a little smaller, but I think you could put a person in there where they hollowed out that droid part. You could just try to.
You can put a Grogu in there, that's for sure.
Oh, they're 100% going to put a Grogu in there. 100%. There's no chance.
He has to be wearing goggles, though.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
For safety, yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, there's no way. There's no way we're not going to see that.
I mean, Grogu in the literal, like, oversized helmet and goggles that Anakin had in Phantom Menace. Like, come on!
Yeah.
You want me to buy another Grogu Funko? I'll finally do it if you put him in the stupid hat from Phantom Menace. So we're obviously talking so much in this episode about specifically prequel stuff, about, like, Fallen Order with BD1. Like, the entire episode is a throwback to Mandalorian. Why, in a show that has a lot of nostalgia, Book of Boba Fett, I think, so far, has a ton of like things from Legends, has things from the OT, that has sometimes worked for us better than others, but this episode, it seems like every single thing, and they did a lot, right? From all that, to the Terminator stuff, to the Superman callbacks, like, there's so much jam-packed in it. Why did every single piece of nostalgia in this episode work so well, and it hit so hard for us?
Oof, I don't know. I think it's, I think this goes back to our discussion that we've had multiple times now at this point about like what is fan service, right? Like because people are always, that's something that gets thrown around. I think it has sort of a negative connotation of like, we're doing this thing so all the fans are happy and they love us, and like, and there's such a blurry line between what fan service is versus just like cool lore and callbacks and that sort of thing. But like, it was really subtle in this episode, right? If you weren't, if you were watching this with someone who hasn't really seen much of Star Wars, maybe only even seen the films, they wouldn't understand a lot of this. I mean, we talked about in Slack that like a lot of folks talked about they would pause it because they watched it with their spouse or somebody, and they would like pause it, have to explain what the hell they're talking about with all the Mandalorian lore and stuff, right? So like, it was just deep. There were so many Easter eggs in the whole episode from start to finish. It was just small cutouts, like seeing Anakin's pod racer, like where it destroyed the road, like stuff like that is just, it's just subtle. And I think that's the best kind of, fan service, if you will. I think it is.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I think there were two things that stuck out to me. The first, I think it worked so well because Bryce Dallas Howard is a genius.
Yeah,
and
really,
like
really
give
good.
her the keys to the kingdom.
My gosh.
And she's a fan. Like you can see that in this. I think the second thing, this episode reminded me a lot of Resistance Reborn. Like reading that experience because it touches
Sure.
on so many different aspects. Like, let's talk about this novel, let's pull in this young adult, let's pull in this thing from the game, and all of this in a way that matters to build to an eventual connecting point. And I think
Right.
this is important because we know that they are working on a larger, greater crossover event. And I think that we needed this information. We needed all these little things to tie in. And I think it's all going to be super important to prove that it worked, and that it will probably work again. So.
Yeah.
And also, like, what's the point of saying like, hey, Disney bought this product, everything moving forward is canon? Like, what is the point of doing that if you're not going to tie things together?
Mhm.
Right?
Right.
Like, that's
Sure.
literally, that is the point. Like, that's why
Yeah.
we're
They
doing
even-
any of
They
this.
even
Like,
had the line, the armor had the line about the mythosaur only existing in
yeah.
Legends or
In
something.
Legends,
that was
yeah,
this week.
literally.
This was such a love letter to Star Wars at large. I think that was so
Yeah.
cool.
I love how they keep bringing the old details from season 2, season 1 of Mandalorian back in, so they can keep reminding us of why, like, how did Moff Gideon get the darksaber? Nobody really knows. But then, so you have to earn the darksaber by winning, like, in combat. And then they kept leaning back on how Bo-Katan got the darksaber, but she didn't really win it in canon. She handed it to her. And so they keep reminding you of these details. So when you go back into season 3 of The Mandalorian, which is into this year?
Maybe I'm gonna guess early next year at this point.
Okay.
Is my theory, but nothing
So
yet.
trying to remind us, keep us appraised of what's going to happen, like, in these
Right.
next shows, so we don't forget, because I did
Yeah, for sure.
until I started doing research again of what happened in season 2.
Yeah, like it is such a giant machine, and to have these things, like you said, keep referencing each other, it keeps you in the know. It keeps you, like, realistic in the business sense. It keeps you on the app. It keeps you watching stuff,
Yeah.
right? Which is also a great thing. But I also think that this particular bits of fan service work because they make sense within the context of the universe. Angelia said in the chat, a great point. It made perfect sense that a mechanic that works with droids would have a BD unit. Like, you didn't need to explain why this BD comes out because, yeah, you have a bunch of droids. That would make sense. Pit droids. Why would you have pit droids from episode 1? Because it's the same planet. You're working in the same area.
Yeah.
Of course. Makes sense. Naboo starfighters. Like, they're from that era. They're going to be junk ships because the Naboo military kind of doesn't do a lot of stuff now. So you can get them for antiques and things like that. And for me, I think for this episode, more than any of the others, it all worked because the execution was so good. Is that if you have fan service with subpar execution, then you will focus specifically on the fan service you're supposed to look at, and you will think about, why am I seeing this? Because you're not caught up in the story. Whereas in this one, Din Djarin flying an N1 starfighter through the pod racing circuit of the Boonta Eve into Beggar's Canyon was so exciting because they say Beggar's Canyon. We see this stuff, but the ship is flying at such a speed, and Din's dialogue is he's having fun. He's like, let's open her up. Like, it feels just so cool. The music is so good. Like, that when he starts to, like, go up into space and the music starts to, like, really increase and the notes get higher, like, you're so caught up in the moment that the fan service is helping those feelings. It's not replacing them. So
Yeah,
you're not
for sure.
distracted, which means by the time he gets up and she's like, how was it? And he goes, wizard.
Oh,
You're just like,
man.
yeah, wizard. Like,
Oh
it's
my
just,
God.
it's fun because it's paying off everything. And I think that sometimes if the show surrounding it isn't as good, then the fan service stuff is like, oh, okay.
Yeah, okay.
Why
so
couldn't it have been
if,
that?
If Din had said I should try spinning, that's a good trick, I would have rolled my eyes. That would have
Yes.
been like,
He
That
did
is not
spin,
funny.
but he didn't say it.
yes, he didn't say
Yeah.
it, right? Like I would say this is dumb. I don't like this, right?
Because that's
This
a
is too
meme. That's
much.
more of a
Yeah.
meme,
Yes,
yeah.
it's a meme, right? But it wasn't like that. It was subtle, right? None of it took me out or like makes
No.
you want to roll your eyes or cringe or any of that stuff. And I don't know. I think it's just world building, and I think it's making all the dots connect, and it makes it all fit together nicely. And like I'm all for it, man. Like it didn't bother me at all that that nothing to do with Boba Fett was introduced until the end because we got all this
Yep.
all this lore and expansion and cameo stuff.
Yeah.
It's really fun.
One of
we
the
love Din.
one of the details that I didn't notice the first time when the armorer handed him the package that was going some kind of armor for Grogu, and then he looked at it on the starship was when, like, the way she tied it looked
yeah.
like
Nice,
Grogu.
like Grogu.
Yeah,
Come
that was
on,
funny.
man.
That was
Come
that was fun. I
on.
love that.
Nice. I mean, what a great callback to that.
Yeah.
Everybody's like,
Yeah,
oh, it
for
looks just
sure.
like him. Oh my God.
There's nothing like an episode like this to remind me that I don't dislike Grogu. I'm just over the merchandise, and I really like
Yeah.
remembering that now and then.
Yeah, that's really it. That's
Yeah,
really it.
don't put it
Yeah.
past him to sell this just like a knotted up piece
A
of cloth
napkin.
for for
For
$20.
$18.99.
Yeah. for
So,
sure.
as we look ahead towards the next episode of Boba Fett, right? We got 2 left of the Book of Boba Fett, and we still don't know quite what's coming next.
Sorry. Sorry to interrupt.
No,
One-
go.
One small thing I wanted to say is everybody was
Yes.
bitching about the episode being called like the Return of Mandalore. What was it called? The
Return of the
Return
Mandalorian.
Yeah, okay, that wasn't listed anywhere on Disney Plus.
No,
Did
it's
you
just
guys-
called Chapter 5. You have to
Yes, it's called Chapter
Oh.
5 everywhere.
Yeah,
So
they're all
yeah, like,
called
everybody
chapters.
was-
None of them have names.
Yes, it's not listed anywhere. So like people were like, "Oh, it's spoiling. Why would you name the episode?" I'm like, I mean, if you looked it up on IMDb, you might get spoiled.
Yeah,
but,
IMDb
like,
has it, but
yeah,
no,
but
and
don't
Disney
go
Plus, they are
look
very good
for
about it.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't know. That was weird criticism that is incorrect. If you see that anywhere on Twitter and stuff, that really bothered me. Everybody was bitching about that because that's not true at all.
You're searching for it. You're searching for things to
Yeah.
complain about.
That's true.
Relax. It's really good.
Enjoy
Like-
the
Yeah.
ride.
That's right.
Now,
that's right.
You mentioned, you
Need
all
one.
said like we didn't mind Boba not being in this episode a bunch, right? We were like, okay, it was a good episode. We didn't mind it. Next week, I would assume we're getting back to the quote unquote normal show. Like, yeah, like we have this, we end here with him and Fennec. I love seeing him and Fennec interact. I forgot how much I liked their like brief back and forths during the Mandalorian. I thought that was really fun. Does this make you less excited for the next episode? Because there's a distinct possibility that next episode Din might be off with Grogu and he might only come back for the finale. If that happens, what do you think we need to maybe mentally prep for going forward to
Yeah.
either not be disappointed or is that not a thing?
You know, I'm starting to realize that I think we need to get our head wrapped around the idea that the stakes are lower with this particular show, right? With Book of Boba Fett,
Sure.
right? I don't think it's a coincidence that they use all this book language, right? Like there's this, everything is chapters in the Mandalorian and like this is the book of Boba Fett, but this is maybe still the Mandalorian, right? Like this is more of an extension of that show rather than its own thing. Like this is just an opportunity for storytellers to explain Boba Fett's story of what the hell he's been up to all this time, right? Like this is not a Boba Fett takes over the crime world, right? Maybe that's not what this is. Okay. And maybe that is what we're going to get. I don't know, but like,
Yeah.
it certainly seems like the stakes are lower. And I think I'm coming to terms with that idea that the stakes are lower and that like Boba Fett is not going to like fight Maul at the end of the season, right? It's like
Right.
epic crazy speed
Right.
level shit. You know what I'm talking about? Like it's just
Yeah.
it's just a lower stakes thing. He's going to defeat some Hutts or he's going to defeat some enemies on Tatooine. That's going to be it, right? And I think as soon as everybody gets their it comes to the kind of the terms of managing your expectations about that, I think you can sit back and relax and enjoy the show because like I think there has been up to this point like a real strong feeling of, all right, this was a good episode, but like where are we going? This is a great episode, but what's next, right? There's always been that looking forward to the future, and freaking Yoda said, don't do that, right? Like live in the moment, and I think that's what everybody's gonna have to do. And I'm certainly more comfortable with the show now at this point, knowing that we only have what, 3? How many episodes do we have left? 3? No, 2. 2 episodes left. I don't think we're going to see anything insane happen in 2 episodes, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Treat it like a spinoff. That's a really good way to look at it. Like, for instance, How I Met Your Father just came out, right?
Oh, yeah.
On Hulu.
Yep.
And I watched
Yeah,
a couple
yeah.
episodes of it. I went in knowing this would not even hold a candle to How I Met Your Mother, which is one of my all-time favorite sitcoms, and I enjoyed it. But if I had gone in expecting it to be just as good, which is how a lot of people are approaching Boba Fett, like, yeah, I probably would have been disappointed. And it's not to say that Book of Boba Fett can't get to that point, right? Because maybe it can, and that'll be a pleasant surprise if that happens. But it doesn't really have to. So that's kind of I like the way that you put that, Corey.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like it's important. We talk about managing expectations a lot at UT, and I feel like it's important to do that, especially with film and TV and that sort of thing. And I'm honestly okay with the idea that some of these TV shows like this are lower stakes. I think it makes it I think it makes it so you can cover a lot more ground in a shorter period of time. And, the idea that this is only a 7-episode series is really fine. Like, I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah. Well, and here's another question though, because you just brought that up. There's a lot of people out there on the interwebs who are saying we can't possibly wrap up this story in like the next 2 episodes. Like, there's a lot of people saying like, technically no one's ever come out and said there won't be a season 2 of this show. I'm curious what y'all think. Is this something that we could see a whole second season of, or are we for sure wrapping this up and moving on?
I'm torn on that, because as of right now, I don't see a need for a season 2 of this. But I think there's going to be something in the last episode that either says yes or no to that, whether we're going to either leave it on a cliffhanger or not. And when we talk about the Mandalorian showing back up in the rest of this season, I don't think he's going to show up in the next episode. Maybe have a cameo in episode 7. But I also think they're going to bring somebody else in, maybe another bounty hunter. Maybe not, maybe we'll get to see the Trandoshan bounty hunter, right? Maybe we'll get to see more of the droid. Maybe we'll get to see the one from season 1. Well, not the exact one because he blew up, but
IG-88.
yeah, but an IG-84 or something. I don't know.
Yeah. All the IGs.
Yeah, I would be fine with that. I mean, I don't think we need a second season at the end of the day. Like, I think that the story exists in and of itself, and I am satisfied knowing how Boba Fett survived, knowing that Boba Fett is still alive, unless they kill him off in the next 2 episodes. That would be
He's alive. Psych. Never mind.
Another spot on the bingo card I wasn't counting on. But I'm satisfied with the story that we've gotten so far, and I think it builds up the idea that the crime syndicates are doing their thing, and that's fine. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm excited to see whatever they bring back. I'm excited to see. I don't know. I'm excited for everything. I mean, Filoni's doing the next episode, and if the Ahsoka episode of Mando season 2 is any indication, like, it'll probably be maybe subtle, maybe the calm before the storm. Like, I wouldn't mind seeing something a little more intimate right before we get a giant battle full of N1s and fire sprays. Like, save that budget. So I'm very excited.
I just want a training montage of Boba playing fetch with his pet Rancor and then getting to know each other. Before we blow stuff up.
Boba Fetch.
I will, in fact.
Boba Fetch.
Boba Fetch.
Oh my god.
Thank
I
you.
will, in
That's
fact,
the
be upset
hashtag.
if we do not get Boba Fett riding a Rancor at some point, even if it's not in this show. I don't care, as long as that happens eventually, because they can't just drop a line like that and never follow up on it. That has to be.
That's
done,
the second time, right? The second time where they've really put like we're gonna kind of let you know, maybe.
Yeah.
I'd like it. But all right, I'm digging this a lot. Now my internet has become slightly unstable at the end of this show, so fellas, this was a great time. I don't want to put our audience through looking at my face for the exit bit. So, Wes, are we gonna have Corey round this out? Are we gonna give him that power? Is that what's gonna happen?
Go for it.
Unlimited power.
Enjoy.
Best.
Yeah. The last thing that Eric had on our walkthrough here, I guess, that we should maybe sign out on is Dave Filoni is directing next episode, right? So that's an interesting idea. Has he done one of the other episodes of this season yet?
Nope,
Not
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 yet.
this season.
This is the first one that Dave Filoni has done. So I don't know. We try not to speculate too much about what the next episode is going to be, but like, I don't know, any thoughts about getting Dave in on one of the last episodes of the season?
I think you got to give him a shot, right? I mean,
This young upstart.
I don't know. I think this. No. Now that I think about it, I think he needs to stay out. I think he's got his own thing. He's got with the Mandalorian, and give some other people a shot at their creativity and their content.
I think
He's doing it. So
anytime you see Filoni or Favreau pop up as having more of a hand in these episodes, I think you have to question, like, are we going to get a piece of the bigger story here in this episode? We know that Filoni came back for Ahsoka and Mando and all that kind of stuff. So are we going to get breadcrumbs? Are we going to even see like the first kind of, I don't know, scene that may tell us what the next series that ties into this might be? that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
I think may be on the radar.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, that pretty much wraps up this episode, I think, of Bounty Hunt. You know, this is probably the first episode that we've ever all given it a solid 10. Has that ever happened before for live action
crazy.
TV? I
Yeah.
don't know if
Nope.
it has. It was very, very good. I think we all really enjoyed every minute of the episode. I'm excited to go back and watch this one again. I only watched this one once, actually. It's kind of
Shame on you.
a little bit. I know I've had a busy week, so I didn't get to watch this one more than once. But I don't know, fellas. Any last kind of closing thoughts about wrapping up this episode of us?
Next week's episode is probably not going to be as good as this one. So
That's the spirit.
that doesn't
That's the
mean
spirit.
to not
Manage your
watch it.
expectations.
I'm just
Wow.
saying.
Wow.
Yeah. Manage your expectations, everyone, because it's not going to be as good.
Fair enough. Well, thanks for hanging out with us, guys, on a lovely Sunday afternoon. It's been nice to have folks in the comments. We've had a pretty active chat. That's been a lot of fun. But I think that's going to do it for this episode of Bounty Hunt. Thanks for listening to the show. Keep your eyes out for the next hunt when we'll be diving into episode 6 of the Book of Boba Fett. Special thank you to our patrons, OK Indar, Jeremy Kazina, JG Karsh, Earl Q, Patrick Ortiz, and Carl Sander on our Jedi High Council, Matt Billington, Taylor O'Toole, Elizabeth Cloutier, Jason Mitchell, Freddie C, and Sally and Chris Eilerson on our Alliance High Command for their amazing support. Go ahead and tell us about your thoughts about the Book of Boba Fett in our Discord community at utini.com/Discord. Be sure to follow the main show on Twitter at Living Force Pod and all of us individually for our latest thoughts about all things Star Wars. I'm Corey Helton. You can get me at Doc Star Wars MD. Charles is at C Henkel. Wes is at Boss West. Timothy is at _T Guthrie. And Eric, you get to go last because you were first in the list, is at Eric Eilerson. Until next time, I don't have a transition. I'm not that kind of guy. Peace out, guys.